Hello, Rebels. Welcome to the Daily California. It is Thursday, May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Am I still allowed to say that? Or is that cultural appropriation? I'm going to wish you all a happy Cinco de Mayo anyway. Not so happy, I'm afraid, is what's going on in our politics in the last few days, both at the national level here in California. Just the sight of these Democrats just leaping, desperately demagoguing this abortion issue for their own political purposes. It just gets worse and worse every single day. We've been talking about it all week. Just seems to get worse and worse. And just to sort of set up the idea here that I really want to make sure we talk about, because it's such a deep thing that I care about so much, which is how we talk about politics, in a respectful way, in a practical way that focuses on solving people's problems, not in this divisive, hateful, demagogic, sort of desperate way the Democrats are doing right now. Let's just remind ourselves where they started out, because we all knew after, it's been going on for many, many years, how divided the country is, how vicious and nasty politics has become. People blame social media and they blame the candidates and they blame Trump. Everyone blames everyone else. And, by the way, I've been in politics a long time. It's not some kind of, sweet, lovely thing like sort of, kids sitting around playing. No, it's always, people have strong feelings. They argue about their feelings. It is tough. It's a tough business. It's always been like that forever. But there's something about the nastiness now that I think people are really sick of. The majority of people in the middle who just want their problem solved in a practical way and just sick of all this kind of grandstanding and endless kind of screaming. So let's just remind ourselves where today's Democrats, where they started out. Biden in particular. Let's just play. I mean, it's shocking when you hear this and you see the kind of things that he's been saying, not just on this issue this week, as we'll hear in a moment, but just think about what he said when he's been talking about race and parents and the way, just nonstop division and hate from Biden. But look where he started out. This is from his inaugural speech.
To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this: bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. And I pledge this to you: I will be a president for all Americans, all Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this.
Yeah, except looks like we can't do this, or more precisely, he can't do this. Did he mean a word of that? Did he mean a single word of that when he said it? Look where he is today. Look what he said yesterday.
What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way that the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Totally despicable. Look at that. He's saying, I want to bring the country together. I pledge to you. I'll be for all Americans. And then he's just insulting half the country, the people who didn't vote for him, the most extreme political organization in American history. He's calling people extreme when he's doing what he's doing, riling up his base, demonizing his opposition, demagoguing one of the most sensitive issues in our politics. These desperate, divisive Democrats, demagoguing all over the place to try and exploit the issue of abortion for political purposes. After he said that he would try and bring the country together, it is absolutely sickening to watch. It is so disgusting. Haven't we got enough division in this country without Biden adding to it. And it's not just Biden, of course. We're seeing it right here in California. Exactly the same playbook, this divisive, desperate demagoguing from the Democrats. Look at Gavin Newsom yesterday.
It's about you. I mean, if the right to privacy is not foundational, they're coming after you. You think for a second same-sex marriage is safe in the United States of America? Give me a break.
I mean, look at this rhetoric. They're coming after you. Have you ever heard anything so reckless and divisive? You know, people used to call Trump divisive. He never went around insulting half the country. He never insulted Americans. Yes, he had, rich language for his opponents, both within the Republican Party and in the Democrat Party, anyone in a position of power. He didn't run around calling his fellow citizens, people who didn't vote for him, bigots and extremists the way these Democrats do. Neither did he run around making up these kind of dark fantasies of what would happen. I mean, there's 2 points here, right? There's the general point, which is the way they are using this to divide the country, the way they're demagoguing an issue that should be talked about sensitively and carefully and calmly and thoughtfully, as we've been discussing all week on this show. And then the specifics of this particular issue. No one is saying, what did Biden say? The LGBTQ kids are going to be put in a different classroom? Who's saying that? You've got Gavin Newsom saying that they're coming after same-sex marriage equality is on. No, that's not part of this at all. It's clear from the ruling, if the draft ruling, as many have pointed out during the course of the week, that even in that draft ruling, we don't even know if that's going to be the final thing. There's limited to this particular issue, and yet they're stirring up all this kind of fear. It's so reckless. And these are the exact same people that criticize everyone else for being divisive and stirring up hate. I mean, it's just hard to take. It is really hard to take when you see this the way they're approaching it, the way they've kind of feels like they've just clung onto this like a lifeline, like a political lifeline. And by the way, of course, it's true that it's not just the left. Of course, it's true that I criticized the comment we saw from Ted Cruz the other day on the other side when he was saying Democrats want to murder babies after they've been born. Yes, we all remember that clip of Ralph Northam, who's then Virginia governor, talking about that awful procedure. We know all that. But the idea that all Democrats want to do that, it's so irresponsible. But frankly, this week, we've seen it mostly from the Democrats, mostly from Eric Swalwell. Remember talking about interracial marriage is going to be banned. Gavin Newsom, they're going to ban same-sex marriage. Biden saying they're going to take kids out of class. It's disgusting. It's so disgusting. I mean, I don't know. And as I said, they're doing it for politics. Why? Because they know that their economic plans, the way they're handling social policy issues, crime, and all the rest of it, totally a disaster. They're terrified about being wiped out in the elections, so they're clinging onto this as a lifeline. And the clearest example of that here in California is, of course, Gavin Newsom himself. Let's just remind ourselves, we talked about this the other day, minutes after this leaked draft ruling, he was out with a tweet. You remember this? Just from the other day, he's saying, let's have a look at it now. He's going to fight like hell, I think the words were. Gavin Newsom just coming out there, not wasting any time at all before turning it into politics, trying to get political advantage out of it. Our daughters, sisters, mothers, and grandmothers will not be silenced. The world is about to hear their fury. Listen to this rhetoric. California will not. We are going to fight like hell. And then the next day, he's out with a campaign ad, immediately jumping on the politics, trying to harness it for his re-election campaign. Let's remind ourselves of his campaign ad.
With reproductive freedom under attack, who can California women count on to defend our rights? GOP-endorsed Senator Brian Donalds stands with Donald Trump. Donalds wants to roll back abortion rights, punishing women and doctors. It's why California women and Planned Parenthood support Gavin Newsom. A lifelong defender of the right to choose, Newsom took on Texas's restrictive abortion law. Newsom will keep California at the forefront, protecting and respecting women's rights and women's health.
I just think it's so irresponsible. This issue is, as I say, it's just so, you got to talk about it in a nuanced way, in a thoughtful way. And they're just straight out there with the politics. And of course, it's a distraction from they try to use it as a distraction from their failing record here in California. As the Cal Matters website, the great independent journalism website covering California issues, they had they do a daily newsletter. I just saw this morning. This is their reporting from that event where we saw Gavin Newsom yesterday talking about, are they, you think same-sex marriage is safe? In that event, he was asked, I'm quoting now from the newsletter, asked Wednesday why he was focusing on reproductive rights instead of issues such as inflation, skyrocketing interest rates, and public safety, when California already does more than any other state to protect abortion access. Newsom had a quick response, quote, because rolling back fundamental constitutional rights has a profound impact across the spectrum of issues. It's a foundational issue. Everything's built of that fundamental right. What a load of old toot. What a load of ridiculous political verbiage, totally avoiding the question, total non sequitur, nothing to do with, how is anything he said there a justification for ignoring what he's actually responsible for and should be held accountable for in his re-election, which is his promises to deal with homelessness, completely not met. His promises on wildfires, where he not only didn't do what he said he was going to do, he lied about it. On housing, on one thing after another. That's what the governor's race should be about, not something that's not even contested in California. No one's talking about rolling back what's here in terms of abortion access in California, as Cal Matters pointed out. So what's he talking about? What he's talking about is trying to save his political skin by latching onto this issue and using it to rile up his base, get the donations flowing in, and in the process, do the exact thing that they constantly lecture everyone else that Trump used to do, which is being divisive and hateful. It is so sickening to watch this. Anyway, I can see that Newsom's not exactly, firing on all cylinders in terms of being on the right message, because did you see this? This was like, I mean, I don't know what to make of this tweet that he put out. I don't know. He's been all over the place on this issue. It seems to be he's just obsessed with talking about abortion. But he had this tweet which raised a lot of eyebrows yesterday because of the way it started. He's actually putting out a tweet with a clip from his press conference yesterday. Here it is. If men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Wait a minute. Wasn't it 5 minutes ago that they were telling us men could get pregnant? I mean, I think we should report this. This is clearly transphobic, hate speech, or is it disinformation? Maybe we should report it to the new what's her name, Scary Poppins, the new disinformation czar. Honestly, I think that someone needs to have a word with Gavin Newsom. He seems to be not on the same page as his far left Democrat base on this question of whether men could get pregnant. We all know men can get pregnant. I thought that was very widely understood now. Anyway, it is just depressing to see this because what you're seeing here is yet again politics and campaigns devolving into this sort of ridiculous, divisive shouting matches instead of actually focusing on positive proposals to deal with the practical problems that people face. And that is what the election should be about. It's not. It's heading in exactly the wrong direction. It is very, very depressing. So here's an example, by the way, of why these politicians don't want to talk about the real things. Because actually, as I've said many times, making real change happen in government is hard. It's complicated. You need persistence. You need to really understand the functioning of the government bureaucracy. You need to get in there and figure it out. You can't just not make these sweeping statements. These days, politicians seem to just not care about that. And so sometimes I say this often, a small thing illustrates a big thing. So this, in some senses, is a small story. It's a San Francisco story. It's not the whole of California, but it illustrates so much. In the San Francisco Chronicle, I'll read you the headline. San Francisco has 305 affordable housing units sitting empty, despite more than 20,000 applications from potential residents. So this housing, of course, massive issue right across, up and down the state. And it gets conflated with the homelessness issue, and so it ends up being this, politicians say, oh, let's spend more money on affordable housing. And of course, that totally misses the point. But this one is a very interesting story because they've built this affordable housing. They've required it of developments over the past few decades, and they're sitting empty. They're sitting empty. No one's there. So here's this. While San Francisco, it's 1992. 1992 inclusionary housing requirement has long been held up as a model. Most major US cities now have some version. It's a model. Okay, so they've got 15% of the houses that they've actually allocated for affordable housing are unoccupied. They're sitting there empty, but they've got 21,000 who've applied to live in the apartments, according to this new report. And so there's an activist saying we have a housing crisis in the city, correct? And yet we have a government bureaucracy standing in the way of getting people housed. It's unconscionable. Yeah, it's okay, it's unconscionable. But the real point here that applies to so many issues emerges in the next part of this, which is when you actually look at how these programs work. So it is unbelievable. Just forgive me because I'm going to read out some bits of this because this is the point I want to make, right? It is so complicated. So it says, the current version of their below market rate program, the units are known as BMRs, requires 14.5% of homes in smaller projects of less than 25 units are affordable, with larger developments must set aside 21.5%. The income levels to qualify, in smaller buildings, households must earn under 55% of area median income, about 58,600 for two-person house. At larger buildings, 60% of the below market rate. 55% of the level, 20% target moderate income households earning 85,000, another 20% go to families earning hundreds. It's so complicated. That's the point. This is what bureaucrats, remember, I have worked inside a government of a country, it's actually pretty much on a par with California, the UK. California is a bigger economy, just roughly, right? Trying to make things happen. And the minute the more complicated you make a scheme, the more likely it is to totally fail. And this is what happens with these policies. They get there, they make these promises, and then they hand it off to some bureaucrat to implement. And of course, bureaucrats, because that's their nature, they make it unbelievably complicated. And obviously, I don't want to question their motives. We shouldn't do that. Their intentions are good. With this scheme, for example, they're trying to make sure that it's fair and the right level of income gets the right, etc. Okay, so they go in there, they put all these layers of complication. And then what do you end up with? You end up with a scheme where you've got thousands of people without somewhere to live, and you've got empty houses basically paid for by taxpayers, because that's all how the cost is. I mean, the whole thing is just a total mess. And that is because bureaucrats make things too complicated and the projects fail. That is a really important lesson. But we never talk about this kind of stuff. We just have, the level of the political debate is, well, let's make these more affordable housing. I'm going to guarantee, and it never happens. And no one ever follows up as to why it never happens, because we're on to the next election. And it's a total joke. That's why you need people running for office who actually understand how to make things happen. And by the way, that doesn't mean make things happen in some other completely unrelated field, in politics or whatever. No, it's very different. Actually, navigating government bureaucracy is hard. It's complicated. It takes time. You've got to really understand it. And we got these jokers running for office who just have no interest in that at all. That's why nothing ever changes, despite the promises these politicians make. End of lecture. Okay, well, now we're going to bring you another conversation from when we were down at the GOP convention in Anaheim. It's actually really interesting. Not a California politician, but someone just to this point I was just making about politicians and why nothing ever changes. This is someone, he's so interesting. You may have seen him on Fox and elsewhere. I mean, I had him on my show just recently because I think he's really, really interesting. But funnily enough, you never really get, because it's so short on TV, it's like, 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever. You rarely get to see the depth of someone and how deeply they think about things. I found when I talked to this person you're about to hear from, this new member of Congress from Florida, he's a really deep thinker about politics and government and why certain things work and don't. I found it a really amazingly interesting conversation. I thought, wow, this guy's serious. He's going somewhere. I thought it was a great conversation. I think you'll enjoy it. I really loved talking to him. He's called Byron Donalds. He's a member of Congress, as I said, from Florida. And we talked to him the other week. Here it is. Hello, Rebels. Welcome to the Daily California. We're continuing our series of great conversations here at the California State GOP Convention in Anaheim. And look who's here. He's not even from California. He's come all the way from Florida to tell us how we're going wrong and how we can fix it. It's Congressman Byron Donalds. You've seen him I think, on Fox News a lot. It's been
Yeah.
great to see you there. First time for us to meet in person.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm jealous though. You're in this T-shirt and I'm not.
Yeah,
so.
we can get away with that in California. I don't know, but what do you think? I mean, you're coming from the free state of Florida.
Yep.
To here, what are your impressions?
Well, it's going to cost Disney a little bit more in my state, but other than that, everything is good.
Okay.
No, I mean, look, it's first of all, in California, you guys are stealing weather from the rest of the country. I love the weather. I love the environment. It's just
Yeah.
your government's awful.
Yes,
And
yes.
the biggest thing is that California has so many natural resources, so many natural benefits that so much of the country doesn't have.
Yeah.
The sad thing to see is that Democrat leadership in this state has just really just put so many people under the thumb, and it's caused so many Californians to want to leave the state for Arizona, Tennessee, Florida,
Yes.
obviously Texas and the like.
There's a lot. I mean, I know people, someone who I hadn't spoken to for a good few months, we were checking in and we did a Zoom call. I said, hang on, where are you? That doesn't look like, they used to live in San Francisco. I said, that doesn't look like San Francisco. Oh, I'm in Florida. I'm in Miami. Well, there's all these people. So they've really, flocked to that sense of freedom that's being
Right.
conveyed in so many ways. But what I'd love to hear a bit more about you and your story, because as I just mentioned, you may have seen the Congressman. I think you're increasingly aware of him and his and what he represents and the kind of arguments he gets involved in. But how did you get into that position? Have you always been involved in politics? If people
no.
who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your story.
So, growing up, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I'm a
Okay.
city kid. I was apolitical. I was a Democrat when I first registered.
Right.
But like most Democrats, and I think like most people in general, you register as the party of your family.
Yes.
And so my mother was a registered Democrat. I registered as a Democrat, but I was apolitical. I didn't think about politics. I didn't care about politics. My family's not political. In college, I never did student government.
Right.
It wasn't until I was 29, 30 years old that I started actually paying attention to
Okay.
politics. And that was really because of my career. I'm a finance guy.
Yeah.
And so my career was banking, insurance, financial services. Through my career and stuff that was happening in the economy, it forced me to start paying attention to government and to
Right.
politics.
When was that? So you're 29. So
This
like
was 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what was going on that kind of got you engaged or concerned? What were the specific kinds of things?
Oh, it was the financial collapse.
Uh-huh.
So the economy is falling apart. Lehman
Yeah.
Brothers was about to fall and collapse. And my company needed information for our clients who were international.
Right.
And so I was tasked with doing the research. The more research I did, the more I kept getting pointed to government programs or government
Right,
policies
right.
that did not make sense, and I saw them unfold in the economy. And so I remember like it was yesterday, I turned on House Financial Services Committee on
Yeah.
C-SPAN. First time I had ever watched C-SPAN a day in my life. And I watched members of Congress talk about the financial collapse,
Right.
but they had no idea what they were talking about. And it frustrated me. I was 29 years old, and
Yeah.
I knew more than they did. And that made me upset, and that's what got me to look at politics and pay attention to politics for the first time in my life.
And did you at that point have a kind of, left-right view of things, or was it more about? It sounds like you were just, shocked by the, why should we be shocked? The kind of incompetence, the basic lack of, or did you approach it from a more ideological point of view at that time?
No, the incompetence is what shocked me.
Right.
Then I started trying to do more research, and
Yeah.
my research started with cable news, and that did not help me.
Right.
And then what I started to do was read about political philosophy. So the first book I ever read was The Law by Frederick Bastiat. And what it talked about is just the purpose of law. It's not Republican,
Yeah,
Democrat, it's
that's
not
an
liberal,
amazing-
conservative.
yeah.
It's just a philosophical underpinning about what law is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I read that. I read some Locke. I read some Montesquieu. Tried to understand, like, really the formation of the country.
Yeah.
And then from there, I kind of realized, like, wow, I'm actually pretty conservative when I really think about these policies.
Interesting.
And then from there, it just matriculated to what it is now.
Such an interesting. I love that. I think that's so interesting. Funnily enough, I remember I was sort of made to read those things.
Right.
In college, and I thought, oh my god, and I hadn't really made the connection. This is what I think for me anyway. I went to college much too early. I think if I'd have gone, like 2 decades later, I'd have got much more out of it. I just couldn't wait to leave and earn money and do a job. So I kind of got through these books, but I didn't make the connection
Right.
between those kind of intellectual kind of arguments and actual practical life. And I guess I was too young. It didn't really occur to me. How did you translate that those sort of readings into what you were seeing going on in the world?
Well, I mean, look, the basic underpinning of it all is that if you're going to have a growing, functioning economy, you have to have a central government that actually does limited things, not so much.
Right.
And I think what I saw was you were seeing the outgrowth of government trying to solve so many societal issues, when the truth is that governments are made up of people who can be wrong, people who are fallible.
Yeah.
So why would you give them so much authority to make so many decisions?
Yeah.
Because they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect.
Yes, I am. How
No,
dare you?
trust me, you're not. You know, I'm just telling you right now, because you're not perfect, because you're not me. That's the thing. So why would you give them so much authority,
Yeah.
knowing that they're going to make bad
Exactly
decisions?
right.
I'd rather make bad decisions for myself. I'd rather people make bad decisions for themselves than you have an all-powerful government make bad decisions that have so many repercussions
Yes.
in our economy.
And then the bigger it gets and the more centralized it gets, the kind of worse the impact, because they sort of take more power and get more and more detached from reality. That's what it's all reminding me actually of a book that I wrote now, like maybe 8 years ago, called More Human. My argument was like everything's become like too distant and centralized and removed from the human scale.
Right.
Whether that's the way we do education or like health, anything, especially government, it's just got so far from the human level. And that's why I think one of those big ideas that I think drives a lot that I believe in is decentralizing power, which a lot of those writers are all about. Like, you got to give it to the lowest possible level. And in the end, the lowest possible level, it's not even local government, it's the individual.
100%.
It's the individual and the family to make choices. So I think it's really interesting. I love all that. So when you get elected, 2020 was that
2020, yeah.
So what did it feel like to then just sort of find yourself in Congress? I don't know, did you feel at home there, or do you feel at home there now, or did you feel like these people still don't really know what they're talking about?
No, they still don't know what they're talking about. And that's the part that's really frustrating.
Right.
When I got there, being in Washington, the history and understanding all the people that have come before you,
Yeah.
like, it's an honor. It really is historic.
Yes.
But then you look around and you're like, well, how did this person get elected? Because when you sit in committees and you go through these policies, and I hear my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk about these issues, it's like you said, they're so detached and removed from reality.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was in a select committee hearing,
Yeah.
and we were talking to faith-based leaders from all across the country. Now, the Democrats control the select committee, so most of them are left-leaning faith-based leaders. But they all said the same thing, which was, we keep hearing about all these programs, but the people we serve aren't seeing it. It's not getting to them.
Yeah.
And so after about 25 minutes, I raise my hand and I go to the chair. I go, Mr. Chairman, instead of putting out new programs, how about we review all the programs we already put out? And if they're not working, why don't we either reform them, get rid of them, combine them, so they can actually help some of the people we say we're trying to help? All these faith-based leaders were like, thank you. Yes, that's exactly what we need.
Yeah.
But unfortunately on Capitol Hill, what you get is, we're just going to do a new program. We're just going to do a new program. Well, what about the other programs you've already done?
Yes.
That's just, now you're just putting good money after bad money,
Yes, exactly.
and you're not getting anywhere in the process.
And it feels like that's the only thing they're even sort of trying to do these days. They're not trying to actually solve, hard problems like what do we do about immigration, or whatever. It's like it's just the only thing they seem able to do is like spend more money, send more money out, take it in through taxes and send it out.
Well, the immigration thing is kind of easy though.
Okay.
So I've been to the border 3 times in a year.
Right.
Joe Biden's never been to the border.
Yes.
Kamala Harris was there for about 2 hours.
Yes, but she's been to Europe now at least. So
Has she been? I don't keep track of her travel plans. I just know she spent a couple hours on the border. That's all I got. But here's the deal.
Maybe has she been to space? By the way, she seems to be very engaged in talking about.
It's
space.
big and vast.
Yeah.
It's here for you and me. I don't know. Anyway, on the southern border, we have one significant problem, and it's that our border agents are completely overwhelmed because Joe Biden has implemented one of the most liberal interpretations of asylum ever.
Yes.
We're not even processing asylum applications. All we're saying is, you want to claim asylum? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's a number. Wait for a judge so he can ascertain whether you're allowed to claim asylum.
Yes.
you should not allow anybody to claim asylum at the southern border. It is an illegal point of entry into the United States. If somebody really fears for their life, what we say is simple. If you want to claim asylum, claim it in your home country at the U.S. Embassy. If there is a credible threat of fear in your home country, claim asylum at the U.S. Embassy in the country next to your country, or the nearest country to your country, or the nearest U.S. consulate. Claim it there and then wait for it to be heard. But to go travel through 4 or 5 or 6 different countries to come to the southern border, oh, and by the way, pay the drug cartels to put you on that journey, that doesn't make any sense at all. And the part that's so heartbreaking is that what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will never tell you is that there are young girls who are being raped on the journey to our southern border. There are parents who have given their young girls birth control or Plan B so that if they get raped, they will not get pregnant on the journey to come into the country illegally.
And these are the people. This is what I put out a tweet the other day that people, responded to, because it's like what I said was there's nothing as cruel as the left's compassion, right? They say it's compassionate, right? Compassion for the people coming from these parts of the world. No, it's incredibly cruel. You're really hurting people by all this. The asylum point is you're so right. That is such a smart point, and it's just it reminds me actually of the EU. Like they constantly talk about trying to make things more like Europe and the EU. Even in the EU, I mean, this used to be a massive problem back in the UK. I've been here 10 years now. I worked in the government back in the UK. For years, you had the same problem. You had people claiming asylum, persecution asylum, but then somehow would manage to travel all the way through Europe to get to England.
That's right.
You had like the strongest economy, more jobs being created. They all wanted to be in England.
That's exactly right.
And so like, hang on a second, if you're really... So they actually did change it. So I think now the EU asylum rules is you do have to claim in the first country you get to. That's why Italy has a big problem, because you get across the Mediterranean and so on. It's like, if the EU can say that,
why can't we?
Exactly. It's a really, really important point. And actually, it's such, as you say, such a broadening of the term, because it's supposed to be for like, not just because you're having a life that you want to get away from. That's called immigration, and there's a process for that. And I've benefited from that. I'm pro that. Like America's a country of immigrants, we get it, but it's got to be done the right way.
Right.
It's really interesting. Do you think there's any chance, though? It just feels like the Democrats are just so ideologically opposed. You're just not going to get anything through Congress on this.
No, we're not going to get anything through with them. Not with Nancy in charge. Look, Nancy runs the place, with an iron fist. Yeah. Bills don't even go through committees anymore. Right. They go into the Rules Committee, which comes out of her office, and then they go to the floor. So with Nancy in charge, there's not going to be any business done. People are always saying, well, why can't Republicans and Democrats compromise?
Right.
As somebody in the chamber, what compromise? It comes out of Nancy's office and goes straight to the floor. There is no compromise.
So there's not even an opportunity. There's not even a moment when you can.
There is no opportunity to even discuss what's going to hit the House floor right now.
That's an interesting procedure. I hadn't appreciated that.
Yeah.
So what about if Kevin's in charge? Kevin McCarthy, as a lot of people around here are looking forward to seeing him and hoping that he'll be there. And I'm sure what do you see changing?
I think we're going to go back to regular order. I think the members are going to do far more work in the committee process, where if you have members on both sides of the aisle debate a bill, we had one the other day. It was Connolly's bill on whatever it was. It was a small bill. But really what happened was I asked a question, and then it opened the floodgates where members are asking questions. And it made Connolly have to defend his bill and explain it. But you know what? That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I always try to tell people I speak with is that passing legislation is supposed to be hard. Right. It's supposed to be deliberative. Because if we pass law, it has massive impacts on society. And if we're wrong, which often in Washington is, then the impacts are worse on society. So it's better that we are deliberative, that we do take our time, that we have long conversations. And if something doesn't pass, in a lot of respects, that's like a great thing for the American people. Because it doesn't upend society or change the way businesses operate or change the way economies operate. Yeah. The biggest example we have right now that nobody really talks about in the last year and a half, because everything's gone wrong, is healthcare.
Yes.
When the Affordable Care Act passed, they said, premiums are going to go down. Deductibles are going to go down. You can keep your plan if you want your plan. You keep your doctor if you like your doctor. Remember all that?
Yeah, and
remember all that, right?
Of course. And it's just when I was getting here, actually, and it was all because exactly. I mean, it's just those promises were just.
Well, look, here's what I'll tell you right now. I've paid for health insurance for 18 years through my working career.
Yeah.
I'm now on the D.C. Exchange as a member of Congress.
Right.
I've never paid higher premiums than in the D.C. Exchange. I've never paid a higher deductible than in the D.C. Exchange.
Yeah.
If the deductibles are so high for me, I could imagine what it does to a family of 4 making $95K a year. It's destructive of them.
And it's exactly the people who the Democrats sort of constantly go on about and claim to speak with, the working people, working families. They're the ones that are really, really good. Those people who genuinely are on a tight, but they work hard, whatever, they're hurt the most by this.
Yep.
It's really offensive. I wanted to ask you about this point about doing less. There's another kind of version of that I'm really intrigued by. It never seems to happen because all the power seems to be sucked in one direction, from, as we were talking about earlier, in terms of decentralization, from people and communities and neighborhoods and localities and states, all to Washington. Is there any opportunity for you as a legislator there to say, I don't even think we should be doing this. This should be done. This should be at the state level or the local level, whatever. Does that happen at all? Does anyone ever?
Oh yeah, that's the story of my life. That's me. I say that often in Washington. Like, why are we doing this? The state should be doing that.
Great.
Look,
do you really?
No, seriously, I do.
Love to hear that. That's fantastic.
Well, because look, at the end of the day, we're only supposed to be doing a handful of things anyway.
Yeah.
Like coining money, immigration, foreign policy, military. It's like a handful of stuff we're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Everything else is really state power and state derived.
Yes.
Because if people have an issue with what their state has done, then they can actually elect or unelect their state representative or their state senator.
Yeah.
How easy is it for somebody to re-elect or change United States senators? That's almost impossible.
Yeah.
It really is. So why would you give so much authority up there? But I do that all the time. The one trait I look for in elected officials is restraint.
Great.
When I talk to people who are running for office, the one thing I'm always listening for, and you guys don't cheat now that I'm putting this out here on a podcast, but the one thing I'm always listening for is, do you understand that just because you can doesn't mean that you should?
Yeah.
There should be some restraint in what you do in using your power as an elected official.
Does anyone else talk like that? I mean, I just get the sense that Republicans, especially, because they sort of talk about all this stuff, and then they get there, and then it all just goes out the window, and suddenly they're just sort of in the system, in the swamp, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And they don't talk like you, and they don't say things like, they don't ask, should we be doing this, should we be giving this, but even Republicans. Or do you see? Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. And unfortunately, I think what happens is there is a vanity amongst elected officials.
I really agree with this guy on almost every line. I think I found a soulmate. It's amazing. I very rarely meet someone who is like, it's fantastic. Vanity. That's exactly what it is.
There is a vanity.
They want to look like the great kind of, I can solve all your problems. I'm just amazing. Exactly right.
Yeah. No, it's a real problem. And I think that this is why so many Americans, they want congressional term limits. Yes. They want members to go home.
It's a great point.
Because the longer you're there, and the longer you get to stay there, the more vanity comes with it.
Yes, and the more isolated you get. That's exactly right. And then so let's just flip back quickly to where we started into Florida. This whole kind of free state of Florida thing. Is that basically just DeSantis and the way he's responded to the pandemic in particular, or is there more to it? What's going on with that?
So the free state of Florida has really come from the people of Florida. Uh-huh. I'm blessed to live in Naples, Florida. It's one of the great places in America. We had a supermarket that also doubled as a bar and a restaurant and sometimes a nightclub, because at the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, supermarkets were essential.
Oh my God, that's great.
And we had a guy, it's called Seat the Table, great place.
Yeah.
We had a guy who built a 2-story supermarket, and he had a bar and would serve food upstairs. So the place would be open all time hours of the night. People were flocking in from everywhere to go, because it was like the only thing open. So guys in there would start saying, man, this is Collier County. We're the free county in the United States. And then when Florida started opening up, then it's, man, this is the free state of Florida. It kind of just took on a life of its own. But it did come from the pandemic. But it's also from what Florida culture has really been the last 28, 29 years.
Yeah.
We've been under Republican control for almost a generation now.
Right.
So Ron DeSantis, he's America's governor. Look, he's way better than your governor. We all know this.
I don't think you'll get much pushback on that from me or anyone else around.
We won't even get pushback from Gavin on this one. Gavin knows. Gavin knows this. Gavin, you know. Anyway, but here's the deal. Florida has had a generation of conservative Republican governance. So if you subscribe to the ideas of individual liberty, if you subscribe to the ideas of doing only what you're supposed to do and no more, giving more authority and more power into the hands of the people, over a generation, what you create is the free state of Florida. So Ron coins it,
yes.
and I give him credit for that because he's continued it. But it's been a progression of conservative governance for 30 years. And Florida is wonderful. You know, I obviously think it is.
Yes.
But that can happen in California again. That's what California used to be.
Exactly. This is what's so infuriating. And like, I remember, you know, like I in another conversation, they're saying, you know, the California dream in many ways
exactly right.
is like even stronger than the American dream. I'm a new citizen. I became a citizen last year. Totally love America and everything. California's like an even better version of that, as far as I'm concerned. Back in England, we used to talk about California. Everyone came here to do their own thing, to be wild, to experiment, to be free. And now these Democrats is just completely the opposite direction.
Well, some of the experiments went too far. But, you know, let people be people. It's fine. It's okay.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Cool. Look, I think at the end of the day, Milton Friedman said it better than anybody ever could. You can judge the power of public policy by the vote of people's feet. People will flock to places that are free, that allow them to just live their lives and pursue their interests. They will leave and they will flee top-down control. They definitely run from totalitarianism if they were even allowed to.
Yes.
But you can judge public policy by the movement of people. There's a reason California is depopulating. There's a reason Illinois, New York, and New Jersey are depopulating, because those governments don't understand that it's not their genius or lack thereof in the state assembly or in the governor's mansion. It's actually the ingenuity of the people that came before them. And if they actually understand that and respect it, they can have great states.
And that's actually one of the geniuses of the founders and of America, that within one country you can have that, and you can say, well, I don't like it, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Thank God for that.
And we still have. They've got to really hang on to that. One last question I've
Sure.
got, but like actually before that, just like when you talked about depopulation, I forgot to ask you actually, why did you go from New York to Florida? How did that all happen?
Oh no, I went to college in Tallahassee, Florida.
Oh, okay. Right.
So I went to college.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is, Mom, I love you, but I was like, I'm going far. You know,
I know how
my
that
mom's
feels.
a tough lady,
I've gone
man.
even further. I've gone from Europe
You went
to
across
the West
the pond.
Coast, exactly.
I went to college, and then you know, when the choice was there for me to either go back to New York or stay in Florida, I decided to stay in Florida.
Right.
And that was easily one of the best decisions I ever made.
Great. So the last question, I mean, it's, you know, let's just leave the most contentious to the end. So the other thing that DeSantis has become very well known for, and a great hero to many, is he's taking it to the woke, right? He's taking on the woke thing. And the Disney thing is an example of that, but there are others. Where are you on all of that? Just tell us how that feels as someone who's in Congress representing Florida. Disney, I'm assuming, is not in your...
No,
district,
it's not in my district,
right.
but it's north. It's there.
Yeah.
I've been there enough.
Right.
I probably won't be going back for a while.
I mean, we're speaking just on the edge of the.
I saw Disneyland.
Disneyland. You know,
I looked at it. I almost did like a little Instagram video next to it, but I'm gonna leave Disneyland alone for now. I mean, look, here's the deal. I think that what Governor DeSantis understands is that there are many culture wars that have been going on for quite some time in the United States, in all the states. And he is one that says, no more. We're going to stop it right here, especially when it comes to kids, because children have their entire lives ahead of them. The only thing we should be doing them is giving them the building blocks to be successful, not shaping their worldviews, not shaping their ideals, definitely not shaping their gender or their gender identity. We should let them be children, let them learn, and let them become who God has intended them to be, not having outside influences change that. And so he's standing up for that. And I think the voters of Florida definitely are supportive of that. And you know what, I'll tell you this. There's a lot of black families that are supportive of it too. I know my mom, there's no way in heck she would want somebody talking to me about my gender identity when I was 7 years old.
Right.
She would have lost her mind on that one. So I think that you have a lot of families who are not typically Republican families who are supportive of what Ron DeSantis is doing.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be rewarded with re-election in November as a result.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of something I've been saying a lot, actually, which is that the way things are going, you've got the Republican Party actually building a multiracial working class coalition.
It's very true.
And you've got the Democrats are going to end up as the party of the rich, white, and woke. That's where they're going to end up.
They throw good cocktail parties, though.
Okay, well, that's something. I don't think it's going to wipe out the incredibly. It's so damaging. This is the thing. It's all just ideological signaling, isn't it? It's just like sending the right message to the activists, and it's just really detached from most normal people's everyday lives and what they need.
Look, people. I have 3 sons. I tell my sons all the time, I just want you to be better than me.
Right.
Just be better than me. It's going to be hard, but I'm just saying. I love my sons. Just be better than me. That's what my mom wanted for me. She wanted me to be better than her. If you have terrible economic policy, terrible governmental policy, how's a kid in California going to be better than their parents were? Think about that. How are they going to grow the family business with more regulation, more red tape, more top-down stuff coming out of Sacramento?
Yeah.
How's that going to work for them? So many family businesses are leaving California. And so what you really want to create, leave everybody's politics, put your politics aside for a moment, your thoughts about LGBTQ, your thoughts on race, the things that really, really divide us, your thoughts on abortion. Put that aside for a moment. Do you want a society where your children can be better than you? And if you truly want that society, then you have to embrace government that is actually limited and gives more authority to you, the individual. If people would just think that way, our politics will be in a significantly better place in the United States.
Well, you put that so beautifully. Let's leave it there. But I mean, I got a feeling we could talk for a long time.
Yeah.
But that was great. I really appreciate it so much. Good luck to you, honestly.
Thank you.
I love the way you're thinking, the way you're talking. It's fantastic.
Anytime. It was fun to be here.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed the show today. As we keep saying, we're experimenting. This is a new format for us, the Daily California. Tell us how you think it's going. Tell us what you think of the. Today I was just at the top of the show. I didn't have anyone with me. Did you like that? Would you prefer it when I'm with Kristen or someone else? We love to hear your comments on any aspect of the show. That's how we're going to make sure that we're really delivering on what you want to hear, because what we're trying to do here is build a movement for all of us who want to see change in California, and we're only going to do that if we really kind of understand each other. And so we really, really want to hear from you. Tweet me at Steve Hilton X. Follow us, follow the show. Make sure you tell everyone about it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you back here tomorrow for the Daily California.